Hi there. Welcome to Sword Buddies. We're your hosts. I'm Troy.
And I'm Justin.
And welcome back. It's been a hot minute, but today is a very special episode. It's a send-off for our sword buddy here, Justin, as he is moving states.
I'm making the big move where it's time to start the next volume in life and head on to Washington State and begin my own self-practice.
Before we get into this, real quick, our sponsor here, bringing us together, H2O. Drink it or you're going to have a problem.
Side effects may include clear urine and frequent urination, but not too frequent. You might want to get that checked out. So Troy.
Yes, Justin.
How was class this week?
Class this week? I actually haven't gone for starting of May. You can see where my mind is at.
This is March.
This is March. For March yet. I've had some family troubles and some family issues, and so I've had to kind of deal with stuff before I go back to class.
I understand.
But before the last time, since the last time, we've had a couple developments. I told you that Nemo, the guy who is a Japanese astronaut that we practiced with, he is now... his work in the U.S. has ended, so he moved back. So I got him a gift, little send-off, little card, and he has now left practice with us. Another good piece of news that happened was, I think I mentioned this a couple episodes back, or at some point earlier, but the teacher that brought my school of EI from Japan over to the U.S., he came and visited as well. Because we can't have our tests like we usually do this year.
You mentioned that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. He wanted to come by, not to adjudicate us or see where everyone's at, but just to remind us that we have a community. Because that's something I really have been thinking about a lot of, especially for our generation, and I guess any generation really, is just a big loss of community. Because I'm not a big person on forums. I'm not a big person on social media sites. I try to be sometimes. It's difficult, but I have trouble connecting over these things.
I understand.
So, it feels weird not being able to go out like we used to still. Mm-hmm. And, but in class it was nice to have him visit and just be like, hey, good to see y'all. It was a nice reminder. Also, shout out to, classmate Billy who watches. Thanks, man. Appreciate you. What else? About anything he said. It was kind of funny. Because it's so infrequent that we all see each other, usually students will develop their own quirks, or they'll follow their teacher. Their teacher will have quirks, and they'll start doing what their teacher does.
Those quirks, yeah.
And one thing that John Ray said since traveling around was, everyone's kind of doing their own version of EI. And while, it is adjusted to where it's you should envision your enemy with your body proportions, you're holding the blade where it's comfortable for you. You need to hold it how we've taught you to hold it. We at the angle. It may be a little uncomfortable, but a part about being a swordsman is you have very good wrist flexibility.
Yeah.
And that's something, especially fencers, Italian fencers. That's a huge thing. You have to have flexibility in your wrist because you're going to take so much strain on it.
Especially if you're in a system that utilizes cuts very frequently. My system is mostly thrust and using lunges and passing, but there is a system that it becomes more of a saber style with lots of wrist rolls to deliver those cuts.
But even I imagine, even for my own work with some point stuff, just getting caught up, if you don't have the wrist strength to keep the sword up, and to be able to leverage your sword when you make contact or you lock swords, it doesn't matter if you have the better lock. They could still overpower you if you aren't strong enough.
This is true. It is not always... It doesn't always come down to athleticism, because that's what a lot of newer fencers will start to do, is if they're extremely athletic, they will just rely on that strength or that speed to overcome their enemy. And what we're trying to do in my school is more focus on, great, you have a lot of that athleticism. Yes, you have that agility, but do you have the technique? Because you can... The reason why my teacher, Tim, started doing this specific school of fencing is because he went to a Rapier tournament, and there was an 87-year-old man in the tournament who took second place. Because his technique was so good, even 23-year-olds were just getting completely destroyed by this guy. And even Tim got completely destroyed by this guy. And he was like, what are you doing? And he said, well, all of these people are doing this fun sort of sport fencing style, but there's this treatise that you should probably look up. And that's the style that I do. And he had been fencing it for over 60 years.
Wow.
So his technique was so solid, even at like 80-something, he was able to just put guys to shame.
Is that, when you move to Seattle, is that what you're going to start doing? Are you going to start looking at teaching your own classes?
That is a goal. I do want to get comfortable and confident enough in my own art that I'm willing to start showing people how to fence. And so I'm going to start by making a move to Richland, Washington, which is along the Columbia River in the Tri-Cities area. And probably for those first few months, I'll be doing a lot of self-practice. A lot of self-discipline in front of a mirror and just drilling, all right, am I open there? And if they give an attack to this quadrant, how do I deal with that? If they give an attack to this quadrant, how do I deal with that? If I feint there and they go to bite there, what adjustment do I need to do while staying covered? And so what I'll be doing for the next 6 months is hyper-focus self-dissecting of habits and traits and trying to make sure, sort of like you said, I'm not doing my version of Fabris, but I am doing Fabris.
Because, I mean, and there is something to be said about, like Jeet Kune Do, the style that Bruce Lee developed, where it was like take a little bit from everything.
Use whatever you can.
There is
that famous phrase he says, "Become water."
Yeah, there is a good argument to do that, where you allow yourself the freedom to adapt to every situation.
Exactly.
Which you should, but especially if you're practicing a certain style. Like we're saying, you should practice the style. You should practice those forms. You should do your best in that endeavor.
And that's why I really like this form. At least our sponsor took a fall, and I apologize to our sponsor. But one thing that Tim has always boasted for this form is that a lot of other treatises talk specifically how to fence guys who use this form. Fabris never talks about it. Because as long as you do this technique properly, it doesn't matter what kind of fencer you are fencing. He has told you everything you need to know to shut down any opponent. And to properly counter or to outfence them.
Yeah.
And so that's really why I want to focus on getting that technique down.
Are you going to have any, even though you're going to do self-practice, are you going to have any partners up there you can fight with?
My buddy Pierce, who I'm hoping to bring on as a future guest to this show,
Pierce
is a swordsman of many different practices, from German longsword to Viking axe and shield to other Renaissance rapier styles. So I'll probably be doing my self-practice and then at least once a week having a fencing bout of multiple different sword styles with him. I'm going to ask him to show me some of his sword and shield technique, because he is a big SCA fighter.
Gotcha.
He'll do heavy and he'll do the Rapier League.
Oh, that's fun. Well, that's a good thing we'll be able to also talk about, because we might not do Wednesdays then, because Wednesdays will be super late.
That's fair.
For recording, at least. Release might still be Friday, but...
Well, it might still be earlier for me than it is you.
Yes.
I will be moving backward in time 2 hours.
Gotcha.
So I will be 2 hours earlier than you. When it's 10 o'clock, it'll be 8 o'clock for me.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
That I can understand. But no, that'll be also something we can also just keep talking about. How else you're training, because that's something I've also been working on in my own journal that I'm doing is I'm not just practicing EI. I also am going to practice my other skills that I worked really hard to develop, like with spear, with fencing, with everything, with sword and shield. Because honestly, I think sword and shield is my weakest. It's my weakest, absolute, most pathetic.
Well, when I come down, I'll be happy to show you. Because I can at least say, for the stage work that I've done with sword and shield, our Kali work was very applicable as long as we had the right style of shield.
That's
you and
fair.
I use heater shields, which are the kite-shaped ones that rest kind of at an angle on the arm when you hold it, and it's really meant for full armored combat.
Not the kite shields that look like a teardrop going up the shield, but the ones that go across.
Mm-hmm. And when I looked up the history of those, it said primarily they were utilized by fighters in full armor. Because they had more coverage, they didn't need to be as flexible. It was mostly for dealing with the opponent, who most of them were right-handed, so it was meant for dealing with the sword side. So when our Kali work translated is whenever we were using more of the Viking round center boss.
Okay.
And so we practiced holding a stick at mid-mast and then another one at the bottom and doing our stick drills like that. And then we would upgrade to the sword and the shield, and we would do our different patterns.
That's fun. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think this is so fun. I just had a flashback to a moment when you and I, or just back to Muskies. Take it back to Muskies when we started talking to Daniel.
Yeah.
About SCA and getting you pumped into it.
And that was why I started Fabris.
And then, I had a wholesome flashback to that. I was like, oh man, look at you. From all that time, you said to find the right plug. But that's really it, man. When you go to, whenever... That's something I did want to talk about. For anyone who does want to find their own martial art, we aren't experts, but from your own experience, Justin, what was it like finding one for you? Because you've tried a couple. Even in your younger years.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is in elementary school, I think in 3rd and 4th grade, I did American karate, and really it was more of a sport to get chubby kids moving. And that's what most of my competition were kids who had sat around watching kung fu movies and wanted to learn karate. But I was more interested in learning how to fight. And so for a while it was mostly me in my front yard with a wooden sword slaying imaginary orcs. And then to go through stage combat, that was exciting for a while. It never really fully satisfied because it was martially based, but not martially founded. It was more inspired.
Yeah.
And so to find something like this that I really enjoy doing and really enjoy using, it's made me more confident. And it's made me more sure of the work that I do on stage. And I gotta say, it's definitely made me healthier. Even more healthier than karate did for me back then.
But if you were someone looking for a martial art, even if you weren't looking at swords, what are the things that if you didn't have any preference, you were going to a new place, what would you look for? Whether it be whether preference, but like what are the signs you look for that a place might be what you're looking for?
They usually let you do the first class for free. Absolutely free. And they will start you at the basics, but they let you participate day one. Some places will say, yes, you can come and watch, and then they charge you an exorbitant fee to start practicing the next time you show up. How at least my class went, and I have heard that this was a good sign, is for my intro class, there was no charge. And it was on the second Wednesday of that month. And for the rest of the month, I got to do the training on Monday and Wednesday, only for $40, whenever it's $75 a month.
Which is insane.
Yes.
I remember when I was looking at ones, because I was looking for a hot minute when we were in school, back in college, I was looking at Kendo, because there was a big Kendo school at U of H.
Oh.
that was going. The big kendo school, one of the biggest in Houston.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. So I could have done that. There also was, I did an Arnis school, like a modern Arnis school for a minute. I don't know, I just didn't feel like, I felt too divided because I was trying to do it and EI at the same time, and that was a bad idea because I was just, they both were well priced. Arnis was $50 for, I was going to 2 classes a week, which is still pretty good.
Yeah.
And EI at the time was $75 a month, which is still pretty good.
Yeah.
But I was still spending a lot of money, and it was just, they were nice. It was bad to split focus like that. But much like what you're talking about, the first class, again, for either one of them was free.
Yeah.
Both of the teachers were like, hey, make sure that this is kind of what you want to do. And they also I also was up front. I was like, look, sometimes, I'm an actor. Sometimes I go missing for a couple months. I'll let you know when I come back. I'll have the dues, but, I'm just going to be gone sometimes.
And both come and go because of rehearsals and things like that. Yeah.
And sometimes they're okay with that. But sometimes these schools, and I've never done a jiu-jitsu school. Like, I haven't done the Gracie Barra schools. I haven't done any of them. But, I mean, like...
Well, what I wanted to keep saying is, it's all about asking yourself, what do you want to know?
True.
What I had always looked for and what I always felt like I wanted was to know how to defend myself. I never wanted to be aggressive. I never wanted to initiate a fight. I just wanted to know how to keep myself from getting hit. And ironically enough, that's what Fabris teaches, is the art of self-defense. It's not about, here's
there
how
goes
you...
the sponsor again.
Keep knocking
you just want to abuse him, don't you?
Okay, look, we're moving the sponsor.
Sorry.
We're moving the sponsor. The sponsor is now there.
Sorry,
sponsor. So now I can move my point freely without any damage.
Sponsor!
But it's important to ask yourself what you want to learn. Do you want to know how to get someone in a lock and keep them from moving so they're no longer aggressive? Look for things like judo and jiu-jitsu. If you want to know... Sorry, look for jiu-jitsu. If you want to know how to get someone from standing to the ground easily, maybe look at judo.
But also, look up videos.
Yeah, look up videos.
Ask friends who might have done them before, because,
And look at 10 videos from different schools.
And
start to get an idea of really what the martial art is about, because some people will create a bastardization of what... just to sell that. Like, there's plenty of places around here that say Taekwondo, but all they're teaching you how to do is get your leg up in the air.
Yeah, like, I know there's a lot of schools that are, they again, like you're saying, they do their own bastardization. And I'm not, like, a purist, because I know there's a lot of different schools of different lineages of all different kinds that can teach you proper self-defense.
But there's a lot of different schools within martial arts.
But before we end here real quick, I just want to say, Justin... thanks for being on Sword Buddies, man.
Hey, this isn't stopping.
I know this isn't stopping.
We're just going to be on 2 different screens now.
I know. It's going to... I wonder how we're going to do it. It'll be easy, but we'll figure it out.
There will be an adjustment period. It may be awkward. Videos may get delayed coming out, but we're still going to keep putting these out. It helps to keep us responsible, and really, I want to sort of explore the community of sword practitioners of all arts.
They're always out there, man. So, hey, I'll see you next time.
See you next time.
I'll see you next time on Sword Buddies.